Our next speaker, he's the final speaker, is Professor Natarajan. He's a vitreoretinal surgeon practicing in Mumbai. He was trained by Dr. Badrinath at Shankar Nethralaya, and he has been practicing in Mumbai for the last 30 years. He has established a hospital called Aditya Jayot Eye Hospital in Mumbai, and also started a charitable organization at this hospital. He has done innumerable amount of work connected with this organization, and he has been running several outreach programs in rural and urban slums in Mumbai. During some part of his, I don't know when, his father recorded a video of Professor Cooper's lecture on neural innervation of the eye. I particularly wanted Dr. Natarajan to tell us how this video came about, because this has now become a historical record of Professor Cooper talking. So without wasting any more time, I'd like to call Dr. Natarajan to tell us a bit more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Badrinath. So I think many people have spoken a lot. I'll just share my screen. I prepared. This is Dr. Cooper. I think this photograph, a bunch of photographs are sent by Dr. Sriram, who should be here in the Zoom today. His brother was a famous ophthalmologist, Dr. K. Ravi, and his father was Dr. Krishnan. And in the 60s, he has attended Dr. Cooper, and he has sent some pictures. One thing I remembered during our anatomy class, and he was all like a tall figure, and we were all like dwarfs, and we were really eager, as everybody expressed the first day in anatomy. We also went through in 1976. We joined in 1975, and then 1976, as the first speaker said, a lot of people were from Tamil medium, and they were fish out of water in the first year, and they learned some English, and then went to the second year with anatomy. And his lectures were amazing, and that time we had a embryology book called by Dr. Inderjit Singh from Chandigarh, but it was very difficult to read. But what Professor Ram showed the embryo notes, and I remember, I wish I also had, but I couldn't preserve. And they are doing one of the model exam, and in the exam just before the final exam, in the dissection, he came to my table and asked me, what is the origin and insertion of gracilis muscle? I told the origin well, but when I told the insertion, he said, oh, when I studied, it was a different insertion. It is changed now. And in a witty way, he just walks away. And you still remember, and because you go back and read and see what is the right answer. So this is a fees which I preserved. And Ram mentioned, we also paid in 1975, there's 232 rupees, 204 rupees for the tuition fees, and 28 rupees for the association magazine and rest. So I had kept it. And this photograph, again, given by Dr. Sriram, thanks to him. And you can see Professor Cooper. On his right, you can see Professor Ratnavel Pandian. And to his left is, I think, Professor Sankaran, who was a medical unit chief when we were studying. And this is in 60s. And I don't know who's on the right of Professor Ratnavel Subramaniam. And you can see here again, maybe looks like a second year party where they would have finished the, you can see some dining table and a chair. And this is what Dr. Sriram received a letter from Dr. Cooper. You can see his handwriting. This handwriting is very familiar, and you can see his signature, affectionately M.M. Cooper. So this was in 1982. And I think the same time we did his video recording, 82 or 83, I think 83. And this is a letter written by Dr. Cooper, and he has written to Dr. Sriram and his wife Usha when they were in US. So I also wanted to talk about our government ophthalmic hospital where I grew up from 1957, stayed in the quarters till 1969. And this is the first eye hospital in India, Asia, and the second in the world after the Moorfield. It was started in 1819. And you can see the picture in 1886. And this is the Madras Eye Infirmary, the Indian Medical Gazette, which says the eye infirmary was originally established in July 1819 by the Honorable the Board of Directors in a house known as the Crompton's Gardens in Rayapeta under the superintendence of Surgeon R. Richardson. And later it has come to the place where it is now in Egmore. And this is the building which is called hosting the Lady Lolly Ward. And then this is also like a red fort. Every red building in Government Eye Hospital was a red building, including the Elliott School of Ophthalmology. To my surprise, I knew that the Chicago Institute and then one more in the US was started around 1835. And there was no museum that time. And this is the first museum of ophthalmology in the world. And I'm now I'm in the committee of the American Academy of Ophthalmology in the museum committee. They have spent some $12 million and made a beautiful museum in San Francisco. And my dream is you can see the rosewood steps where like our anatomy, which is captured here. And this is when I was the president of All India Ophthalmic Society. I went and I want to support them. Dr. Badri, can I play the Dr. Cooper's video?
Please do. That will give us some idea. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry for the converting from VHS tape to the.
Good day. Yeah. Today's topic is the oculomotor nerve, that is the third cranial nerve. Well, we begin the description of the oculomotor nerve with its nucleus. The nucleus lies, as you can see, in the midbrain. This is the section through the midbrain. This section is at the level of the superior colliculus or superior corpus quadrigeminum. Now, here is the aqueduct, that is the cavity of the midbrain. In the floor of the aqueduct lies the nucleus. From there, fibers emerge. They go ventralwards. As you can see, they are passing through the red nucleus. They are passing through this body. This is called substantia nigra. Having passed through substantia nigra, they come out of the basis pedunculi into this interval, that is the interpeduncular fossa. That is where the oculomotor nerve emerges. Now, having told you about the situation of the nucleus, I go on to the nucleus itself. Now, here you see the oculomotor complex. That is, what parts the nucleus is made up of. Here, it is the Edinger-Westphal part. Here is the dorsal longitudinal part. The dorsal longitudinal part innervates the inferior rectus muscle. Then the intermediate part, that innervates the inferior oblique muscle. Then the ventral longitudinal part, that innervates another muscle. Now, medial to that, you see the red colored zone, that innervates the superior rectus. Whereas this yellow colored zone, lower down, innervates the medial rectus. Now, let's go behind and you see far back a purple colored mass. This mass is called the caudal central nucleus. And the caudal central nucleus innervates both sides, levator, palpebrae, superioris. The Edinger-Westphal nucleus, as you see here, which is dorsal most, and which you will see in another figure also, it innervates the pupil. It brings about involuntary contraction of the pupil. Well, the last picture was a lateral view, but here you have a view of the right and the left oculomotor complexes seen from dorsal aspect, that's from top aspect. And in the midline, you see the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. It's seen quite properly. It's posteriorly, it is split into a median part and two lateral parts, but these parts, they join together to form a common mass anteriorly. That is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. This is the caudal central nucleus. You are seeing the interpeduncular fossa of the brain from the ventral aspect. Here, this is the pons. These are the cerebral peduncles. This is the optic chiasma. These are the optic tracts. Here is the interpeduncular fossa, in which you see the mammillary body, the posterior perforated substance, and what is more important than these are the arteries. These two arteries are the posterior cerebral arteries. These two arteries are the superior cerebellar arteries. Now, this is being mentioned because the oculomotor nerve, as it emerges from the interpeduncular fossa, it passes between these two arteries and goes further for its course. Here, you are seeing a coronal section passing through the skull and the cavernous sinus. This is the sphenoidal air sinus. This is the cavernous sinus. And in this cavernous sinus, you are seeing the venous blood and all the structures which pass through it. The oculomotor nerve travels in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, topmost. That is, it is the uppermost structure. Below that is the trochlear nerve. Below that is the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal, and still below the maxillary division of the trigeminal. Within the cavernous sinus, you can see the internal carotid artery and the abducent nerve. Now, this means that as the oculomotor nerve is traveling in the cavernous sinus, it is superior to the trochlea. It is far superior to the internal carotid, and it is traveling the lateral wall, going forwards to approach the superior orbital fissure. Now, here is a schematic view, right-sided view of the right cavernous sinus. What we propose to show is this. In the proximal end of the cavernous sinus, the oculomotor nerve is most superior. But as it goes further forwards and as it approaches the superior orbital fissure, it inclines downwards. And at the same time, the other nerves, the trochlear nerve and the ophthalmic division of the fifth cranial nerve, they incline upwards. They pass lateral to the oculomotor and they come to a level more superior than the oculomotor. So as they emerge through the superior orbital fissure into the orbit, the oculomotor nerve will be on a level lower than the trochlear and the branches of the ophthalmic division. Now, ladies and gentlemen, so far we have explained to you where the nucleus of the oculomotor lies. Then we have shown you how it passes through the midbrain. It comes out through the interpeduncular fossa between the posterior cerebral and superior cerebellar arteries. Then we have explained to you how it passes through the cavernous sinus and how it approaches the superior orbital fissure. Now, in this picture, ladies and gentlemen, what we are trying to show you is the front view of the right orbital cavity. The pointer is moving on the anterior orbital aperture. Far behind, near the apex of the orbit, the superior orbital fissure is visible. Superomedial to the fissure is the optic foramen. And this purple colored ring is called the common tendinous ring. It is from the tendinous ring that many of the muscles take origin. Now, here you see oculomotor nerve entering through the superior orbital fissure. Here is the upper division, here is the lower division. The upper division is spent in the supply of rectus superior and levator palpebrae superioris. The lower division sends a branch which passes below the optic nerve medially to supply the medial rectus. Then it passes along, continues along the inferior rectus muscle. It gives a branch to the inferior rectus, not shown in this figure. Then it gives off a motor route to the ciliary ganglion. That is the ciliary ganglion. And then it continues as the nerve to inferior oblique. This is the way in which the oculomotor nerve, in the form of two divisions, is spent in supplying muscle. This transversely situated muscle here is the inferior oblique muscle. Now, having explained to you in a simple manner the course and distribution of the oculomotor, we give you an idea of the part played by the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Here, the Edinger-Westphal nucleus is very schematically shown in two parts, an anterior part which is for pupil constriction and a posterior part which is for accommodation. Now, please follow the fibers and how they pass. This is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. This is the schematic view of the oculomotor nerve. Both types of fibers, namely pupil constrictor as well as accommodation fibers, pass through the oculomotor nerve. They run through the lower division of oculomotor. Then they leave the lower division of oculomotor or the nerve to inferior oblique through the motor route to the ciliary ganglion. This is the motor route of ciliary ganglion. In the ganglion, you find the pupil constrictor fibers, which are green in color, they synapse. Postganglionic fibers go to the sphincter pupillae muscle in the iris. Then let's come back to the accommodation fiber. The accommodation fiber from the posterior part of the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, that accommodation fiber runs similarly through the lower division of the oculomotor, comes through the nerve to inferior oblique, it passes through the motor road, but most of these accommodation fibers do not synapse in the ciliary ganglion. They are said to synapse in episcleral and intrascleral ganglia, which go by the name of Axenfeld. There they synapse in the nerve cells, and postganglionic fibers, which are naturally much shorter, they travel through the choroid and they reach the ciliaris. They bring about accommodation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, having finished in a simple manner the course and the divisions and the final branches and distribution of the oculomotor nerve, in conclusion, we have this much to say, that the oculomotor nerve has two components. One for supply of the muscles moving the eyeball, and the other for pupil constriction and accommodation. Now, if the oculomotor nerve gets paralyzed, if it is injured in any way, signs that this patient shows. The patient shows ptosis. Now, ptosis means dropping of the upper eyelid. The upper eyelid is more closed on the affected side than on the normal side. Moreover, the pupil constriction reaction or pupil constriction reflex is lost. And much more than that, the muscles which it supplies are paralyzed. Now, the superior oblique and the lateral rectus are not paralyzed. Therefore, the eyeball gets fixed in a lateral direction. So there is lateral. These are the main and important effects of oculomotor nerve paralysis.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badrinath. And I think, sorry for the recording now, when I was reading it, I hear it many times, being an ophthalmologist and dealing with but anyway, I do it, and I think it's very useful for a neuro-ophthalmologist and a neurologist, and you can see almost, I think you told me to explain, because during 82 to 84, I was a postgraduate in ophthalmology in Government Ophthalmic Hospital, and early morning, we used to have postgraduate lectures at Shankar Nethralaya. So since I was interested, I used to go there at 6:30 in the morning and listen. And for anatomy, Professor Cooper was coming, and for pathology, one Dr. Ratnakar from Karnataka was coming. So like that, Dr. Badrinath collected all the best teachers. And I think my father took over as was going to be taken over as the chief of the Government Ophthalmic Hospital as a superintendent. And that time he requested Dr. Cooper. This video recording was taken in my father's clinic, which was in the house only. That's why you can see the sounds. One thing you would have noticed, in this, my father got some artists to make the various layers of the anatomy of the third nerve. And that was given to Professor Cooper, and that was put on the board, and then he did the recording. I mean, it's amazing. It's like extempore. He didn't have any notes he didn't bring. I remember that. And we had an ordinary, some wedding video photographer coming and taking the video. There was no professional video, but still, it's, I think all of us still enjoy. You can see Dr. Cooper live, and we will remember, as Dr. Raj said, that it's tattooed in his brain. I think everybody was listening to him, it's still, his voice is echoing. And I was actually we conducted a a program called Manoranjan and Kelotsav in 1978 when we were in third MBBS, when we finished anatomy and physiology. And many times I remember calling Professor Cooper for coming as a judge for some event, but he was always, I mean, he was okay, a supportive student, but he never came. We were very difficult to understand him. And when Zareen spoke in Tamil today, I remembered, Napa Solra, like that, his Tamil was totally different and never even understood he was a Parsi till I came to Bombay. And I now live to a place close to Parsi colony. So I know of Parsi's contribution to India. And so I'm glad. Thank you, Dr. Badrinath, for asking me to. Looks like I'm a 1975 batch, 13 years younger to you, and I'm happy we could recollect Dr. And I tried getting some photographs from my batchmates. None of them probably have a photo of Dr. Cooper, but I don't remember. Second MBBS, I remember vaguely one of the get-together. We had a photo. I'm still trying to locate. If I get it, I will send it to you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Dr. Natarajan. That was wonderful. You have got something which is historic, and I think if we can make it into a better quality video, we can preserve it forever for future generations to see. The only thing I would like to mention is here, Professor Cooper is showing the already drawn pictures. If he was allowed to do that, he would probably draw everything actually and bring it all to you straight away from his own hands, rather than showing pictures
Correct.
with.
Yeah. That's what actually he did even in the Shankarnatha lectures. He was doing it on the board, but I don't know why my father did it at home like that.
Whatever it is a historic recording, and we can hear how Professor Cooper will address the gathering. That's wonderful. Finally, I would like to call Dr. S.V. Kandasamy to propose a vote of thanks.
Dear friends from the past and the present generation of MMCIs, good evening to all of you, and maybe good morning for a few friends like Murali living in the West. Today is a special day for every MMCI who have gone through the portals of the great Red Fort, not only to see and experiment with the dead bodies, but also to meet the greatest medical teacher in Dr. Cooper, our professor of anatomy. Daniel teacher whose figure will stand in our mind throughout our life. Today, our online meeting is to celebrate the life and legacy of Professor M.M. Cooper. It is my greatest pleasure to thank all the 5 speakers who brought back nostalgic memories of our time in the college during the 60s. A special thanks to Mr. Sriram, who, in spite of his busy schedule, was able to come and tell us about Red Fort, where we spent 18 months spending 1.5 hours every day morning, and where we learned about human body. We, the directors of Madras Red Fort Doctors Association, feel that we should develop a memorabilia in the name of Dr. M.M. Cooper in some form. We would welcome all your suggestions regarding the type of memorabilia. You could send your suggestions through email to madrasredfort@gmail.com. Again, probably you may not know, but if you want to know the details of our foundation, it is available to anyone to see at our website, madrasredfort.com. Thank you all, friends, for being part of this heartfelt tribute. Let us celebrate Professor Cooper's life, his passion for education, and the Red Fort, the place where our dreams took flight. Thank you very much.